What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about the most important aspects of quarterback throwing mechanics. So we're going to be talking a lot about weight transfer and hip drive, and then how you can separate your upper half from your lower half and get a clean release point and be a more accurate passer. So I hope this video gives you some value, gives you everything that you need to improve your throwing motion, your throwing mechanics, and be a more efficient quarterback. But also, fellas, if you guys need to improve your arm strength and you want to be able to do that in 4 weeks, check out that very first link in the description for our quarterback arm strength bundle. Very first link in the description. What you'll get is a full step-by-step guide, all the things arm strength. So everything that you need to do mechanically and off the field to improve your arm strength, and also a 4-week workout program with the specific exercises to improve your leg strength, core strength, hip drive, flexibility, everything that ties into throwing a further deep ball and more velocity on your throws. So check out that very first link in the description, fellas, for our arm strength bundle. Let's get started. So first thing I want to talk about is look at this throw from Mahomes here. Great job showing that front side discipline and weight transfer. So this is we're going to show 2 examples of Mahomes and Brady and what they have in common. And then we're going to take a look at a clip from Baker Mayfield on what he does a little bit different from these guys, which affects his release a little bit. But again, we're going to talk about all those aspects. So when you're throwing, you don't want to have, everybody loves to say, oh, you want to be 60-40, which isn't necessarily bad. But when I've been emphasizing with my quarterbacks, and you're seeing this a lot more, is you want to be like 75 on that back leg, 25. And 25 on that front leg. Let me explain. Because the goal is to transfer. When you transfer your weight from this back leg, you see Mahomes is very loaded on this back leg. When you transfer your weight, and it's not a push. You're not like a pitcher. You're not pushing towards or you're not pushing to the throw. You're pushing towards the throw. You're staying in that base. You're just shifting that weight from that back leg where you're loaded to that front leg. Because when you transfer that weight and you see how much weight he's getting to almost like the outside part of that foot, that's what allows your front hip to come open, right? Because a lot of people talk about hip drive, right? But if you're just rotating your hips with no weight transfer, you're not going to get as much power on the ball. What a lot of quarterbacks struggle with is they'll get to the top of their drop and they'll be super front leg heavy. Like you'll see it all the time. Like let's say you're throwing like a timing route and you're throwing off your 3rd step and you're just going 1, crossover 2, hit the 3rd step. Everybody on their crossover 2nd step gets like 70% of their weight on their front leg. So their 3rd step has no weight, and then they end up throwing out in front of themselves because they're throwing off their front foot. And everybody says, oh, don't throw off your back foot, which is correct, but you got to have some weight on that back foot to transfer to that front leg, right? And you see that's, and you don't even have to show Mahomes' feet right here. You can just see it based on this clip from like almost his like quad up, right? You see how much weight he's shifting through, because getting that front hip to open up is what allows this back hip to drive through. Everybody talks about that back hip coming through. That comes from the weight transfer and the front hip opening up. So that's how you got to think. You almost want to pretend like you got an axis down the middle of your body. There's an axis down the middle of your frame, and what you're trying to do is just rotate on that axis. You're trying to keep your spine almost like straight, and you're just letting your hips can do that external rotation, but that mainly comes from transfer. You want to transfer that weight from that back leg, transfer it to the front leg, and then the arm just rolls through. You don't even have to think about the arm, but that's what we're going to be focusing on now. So as I'm starting to weight transfer, what a lot of people don't do is they'll start this backstroke before they start to weight transfer. So they'll go back with the ball, and they get to this like opposite L right here with this front hand and this front shoulders closed off, but they won't be transferring any weight. So they end up having those shoulders come through before their hips. The sequence of the throw is front stride gets down, then my hips go through, then my shoulders go through, then there comes the ball. The ball trails everything. That's how you guys produce torque on the throw, okay? So when you go back with that ball, that's when you're starting the weight transfer. You guys all saw that drill that Dak Prescott did where his hips were going through. Watch how when he transfers his weight, his shoulders go back. That's what that drill's working on. It's working on weight transfer, getting your hips through, but also having your shoulders go back at the exact same time, because that's what gets this ball to go through. He's not manually thinking about, okay, I'm going to go from L to L. He's thinking about, okay, I'm getting to this backstroke, and my hip rotation, my external rotation is what brings me up to this 90, right? You get to this 90 naturally. At least that's how I think about it. I think about just getting to a backstroke, and my hip drive is what brings me up to that 90. I can't think about every little aspect of the throw, but hip drive and weight transfer is what I can think about, right? So now, when he's rotating through, you guys, I notice how his front hand and his front shoulder hardly even move. They just stay right there, right? And a lot of people think, and a lot of people say that this is from having a baseball background. A lot of guys who have a baseball background do this a lot with their front side. It's a lot easier because you're constantly throwing with the glove on. So it's like almost like added weight. So it builds that stability and that control in your front shoulder. So if you played baseball in the past, you guys could probably work on this front side a lot easier than somebody who hasn't. But again, that's not saying that it's not doable. So what this is for your release point. So when I go through here, and when I go back with this ball, if my front elbow, because again, we talked about it, your body's split down that like midline, that axis that goes down your frame. If my front elbow pulls down here to my hip, and that's what we're going to be looking at later with this clip from Mayfield, my release gets pushed high. because you want to think of it like your body's like a teeter-totter, right? So if I go down here at my elbow, my release gets pushed high, and then I come down on the ball when I release, and that can make you release high. So if you guys miss high a lot, check that front elbow. Don't let that front elbow come down to your hip. There was an old teaching that said, like, with this elbow, you almost want to, like, they say that it's for more power. It's not for more power. It's incorrect power. It's inconsistent. But they almost say, like, you want to elbow the midget right next to you, right? You want to elbow somebody in the head. That's not good. That's going to make your release point get pushed high, and you're going to be coming down on the ball like a pitcher, and you're either going to miss real high or you're going to miss real low in the dirt. So make sure that we don't let that elbow swing down. Now, the other mistake that a lot of people make is they'll swing this front shoulder open. So what they'll do is they call it like a replace. So you want to start with your left shoulder on the target, and you want to replace with your right shoulder on the target. That's not necessarily true. You want to stay square. What I mean by square is I should be able to draw a square with your hips and your shoulders. It should be a perfect square, or like a rectangle, right? So when I come off here and when I rotate through, you see how Mahomes stays square. This allows him to not throw sidearm, because if we get to this release point right here and this shoulder is swinging out, your arm is going to fly because your body's split down that midline again. So if you're swinging this way, they call it pulling. That's going to make your release shoot out wide, and then you're going to have that wrist come underneath the ball, and that's why people, like, especially on deep throws, don't get that nose of the football to turn down. That nose of the football glides because they're pulling that front shoulder out of there, and their hand comes underneath the ball, and then the nose flips up in the air. So you got to make sure that we don't swing my elbow down. I stay square with my shoulders, and you finish square. It's all about that release point. It's all about that extension of the release. That's going to get you power. It's not about rotating and replacing and finishing back pocket with the back of the shoulder on the target. It's you want to stay square because your weight transfer, that's what brings it all, that's what ties everything in. The weight transfer and the hip drive is enough to bring that ball through. All you got to focus on is just throwing darts with that follow through now and picking spots. So it's a weight transfer, hip drive, your shoulders stay back for torque, and not to mention that's what gives you more velocity on the throw, because when you combine that front shoulder being closed, they call it hip and shoulder dissociation, right? So when this front shoulder's closed, it's a slingshot of energy, because that rotation with your front hip, when you separate it with a good disciplined front side, this doesn't just help with accuracy. When I keep that there on my chest, there's that torque, there's that snap to the throw that you guys always like, that everybody always likes to publicize with that, like, just, that when people say, he's got a clean stroke, he's very twitchy. You hear people say, like, the Elite 11 guys say that he's very twitchy. When that comes through, or snappy, whatever you want to think about it, when that comes through those hips, that weight transfer, and your front side delays, that's how you get more twitch on the ball, and that's how you get a lot more velocity on this thing. So I know this is a lot to break down for one clip, but fellas, this is the key right here to get that clean, consistent motion. These are the main key, dude. Nobody teaches this kind of stuff for free, right? Nobody gives away this kind of information for free. It's always the quarterback coaches teach you this. This is the stuff that you need to be able to do on your own and build these good habits, right? So let's watch this thing again, full speed, one more time. Now we're going to look at Tom Brady's motion. This is a perfect example of what good mechanics can get you. Best quarterback in the league doing that. So now let's take a look at Brady's motion. So you see, I know it cuts off a little bit, but look at his front hand, right? That's what I want to talk about. We can't really see his lower half for the weight transfer, but look at that front side, right? So again, he closed. Now he takes the ball back a lot differently than Mahomes. That's one of the other keys that I want to make sure that you guys understand. It's not about taking it back. It's not about getting that perfect L. Everybody takes the ball back differently, but what remains consistent? That front shoulder stays closed. You can somewhat see that front hip of Brady's starting to open up right there. And what does he do with that hand? He keeps that hand nice and clean to his frame, because now he's got that clean release point. A little bit of a lean out of there with his head. You look at old clips of Brady, and he really has a problem of leaning, right? So like that front elbow going down to his hip, which causes that release to be high. But you see over time in his career, it's more of a hip transfer. It's more of a weight transfer with his lower half rather than a lean out of there with his upper half. And again, that front hand stays nice and tight to his frame, almost on that collarbone. That's how you guys have that consistent release point like we talked about, and the torque on that throw. So now let's take a look at a clip from Baker Mayfield. I know we just briefly touched on that, but it's just a recap, right? It's just to show when you start knowing what to look for and you pay attention to a lot of these elite guys. Aaron Rodgers is a perfect example. Josh Allen, you look at their front arm, you look at their hips, you look at their weight transfer. It's not a long stride. They're playing almost in like a hula hoop, almost a real big hula hoop, and they just transfer their weight. Hips go through, their feet stay connected to the grass, and that front side stays so disciplined. Everybody throws the football differently, but can you pull these consistent things that all the elite guys do and add it to your game? That's how we get better, right? When you look at 32 guys in the NFL and they're all doing some similar stuff, and all those guys can spin the hell out of the ball and do anything they want with it, then you're like, man, that's something you should probably apply to your game. You don't know better than the best people in the world. And if you got a coach who thinks he knows better than the best guys in the world, he's wrong, and you should probably be checking that asking him questions about this. Well, hey, how come this guy does this? Well, how come he does this? And you're teaching me to do this. That and make him explain it, because they probably won't be able to explain it. It's just an old way of doing things. The quarterback position constantly evolves. 5 years from now, this video might be completely irrelevant because there might be a better way to do things, right? It's constantly evolving, and you got to be able to evolve with the game. So now let's take a look at this clip from Baker Mayfield here. So I want to talk to you about his front elbow and his release point. Now, he rips the hell out of the ball, right? And I'm not saying this doesn't work for him. I just want to explain to what it does for your release point, because he doesn't have the worst habit in the world because of how level he stays with his head, but he does dip the front elbow a little bit, and that's what I want to talk about. So you see, and this, honestly, though, this is something that shorter guys do, because you got to be able to have a higher release point as a shorter guy because you're throwing over the line, right? So Mahomes is like 6 foot whatever, Brady's a tall guy, but you look, Mayfield's like about what, 6 foot 6'1", I think. I don't really know how tall he is, but again, for shorter guys, they have this issue, right? But Kyler Murray doesn't, right? Kyler Murray has a great clean front side, but this is just something that you see a little bit. I just want to make sure you guys don't take this to your game, right? So you see how Mayfield, when he goes back, how much he's swinging down with that elbow, and that elbow is going towards his hip. Now look what that does. You see how much higher his release point is, and see where his elbow is, and see how his shoulders are tilted than the other quarterbacks that we just looked at, right? That's the example that we're trying to get to. When I swing my elbow down like this, that's when my release gets pushed up high. Now, Mayfield does a great job of keeping his eyes level. That's another key thing, right? That's if he were to dip his head way out of there, like he was to lean out of there with his head and do this, his release would be really inaccurate. He would be very, very inaccurate. But Mayfield is not the most inaccurate passer in the game, right? He's actually, honestly, I really like Mayfield. I'm a huge Mayfield fan. I just want to point this out to you guys because that's what that front elbow can do, right? If you have that problem, that's the end result. That's the end game. That's the opposite side of the spectrum of the guys you see like Mahomes, Josh Allen, Brady, where that front hand hardly even moves. But when I get a lot of action with that elbow, that can make my release point get pushed a little bit higher, and that can cause me to release high, cause me to release too late and have the ball go in the ground, okay? So that's how you guys can see both examples of this. Let's watch it again full speed one more time. Just got to make sure that we're disciplined because Mayfield has great hip mechanics. He really transfers his weight well. He's really able to drive through. It's just that elbow sometimes gets a little bit low, which can push that release high, and I'm sure he'd be the first one to tell you that as well. But okay, all right, fellas, I hope this video helped you guys out. Again, I hope this gave you some value. I hope you learned a couple things about throwing mechanics and just kind of learned how you get more velocity, be more consistent, be more accurate, and just be an overall better QB. So feel free to leave any questions you guys got in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, fellas, very first link in the description, if you guys want to improve your arm strength, want a 4-week workout program to improve your arm strength and everything in a book, like a specific booklet, like an ebook, all the aspects of arm strength, all the mechanical things, you could have that in front of you as a reference point. Check out that very first link in the description, fellas. Hope you guys can take advantage of that quarterback arm strength bundle. I'll see you guys next time.